Okay, so hey, we're glad you guys are here. So always like to get started with what you guys are seeing out there. It's summertime. You should be crazy busy. What are you feeling? What's going on? Are you guys busy, slow, listing sitting? Listing sitting? Okay. So, all right, my question is there traffic on them? Are you getting showings or are you just not getting offers? You're not getting showings even. Okay, that's not good. So listings aren't even showing. When you look at the traffic in the area, is there other traffic on other people's listings? Are yours the dogs? Oh my gosh. I forgot. We got a rich people problem over here. So, okay. John, can you bring us back down to reality? What do the normal people listings look like?
So, I mean, we've got some that are on large pieces of land.
Yeah.
Those have had moderate showings.
Okay.
Not terrible, but I mean, moderate showings being like we can get one a week is probably like exciting for that. I mean, we've got some that are priced under 300 though.
That are sitting? Wow. Okay. So updated Watauga under 300 should be moving, not sitting, for certain.
People are thinking about small kids, like you just got a lot of really picky things about like size of certain things and like the kitchen's a little small or whatever the case might be.
Okay.
But this is around a quarter lot. I mean, it should be moving.
Yeah. Agreed. You know, we're going to talk about the national stuff and the local stuff here today, and I think one of the things that's starting to stand out is that we are starting to see a difference between us and the national level, which is not necessarily a great thing, but I think overall we're starting to get a little healthier on inventory and some other stuff we've talked about in the past. But I'm a little concerned about some of the stuff you guys are talking about because it's still June. Like we should be busy. You know, since 2018 or 2019, we started to see a slowdown right after the July 4th holiday weekend, which was always really early because usually we went kind of lights out through, if we got people who want to come in, we were lights out through about the second or third week of July every year. And then now we just don't have that anymore. And this year we kind of slowed down after May. So we got a couple people out there that might come in. So I don't know about you guys, we saw the slowdown after Memorial Day was kind of when it kind of shut off. Memorial Day was a little bit on the quiet side. And then afterwards we haven't really had a lot of activity. And what I'm more worried about is we haven't had a lot of application activity. So because that's the stuff that's going to feed our third quarter, and we're just not seeing that come in right now. We should still be busy with that through another couple of weeks, I would say, into July, and we're just not seeing it at all. So it's interesting, let's put it that way. But I'm wondering how much the election coming up is starting to influence that. Normally the election influences things about 2 months out. Now I'm starting to wonder if it's a little bit more than that this year. So I don't know. And we've had a lot of rain too, so I know people weren't wanting to get out for a while there.
I saw a survey by Fannie Mae, and they said 87% of the people surveyed said they don't think now is a good time to buy a house.
Yeah, I've seen similar stuff. So we're seeing more and more of that. And I can tell you this, you know, rates are still hovering in that 7 range, and that tends to turn people off. And so I think the combo of that plus the prices going up. By the way, anybody see the price report that came out this morning? Just got released year over year. 7.2% year over year increase in home prices, which is still a really big number. But I mean, if you think about it, if you've had people sitting on the fence for a couple of years now, even just 2 or 3 years since the rate started going up, they've lost 20% in price appreciation because they didn't jump off on and do something. So there's a little bit of a conversation to be had that says if you don't get in at some point, you're going to get left behind completely because we still don't have enough inventory for all the people who want to buy homes. Even if all the stuff came on the market that should be on the market, we'd still be in an inventory shortage for the amount of people that want to buy. So it's not going to get better. Let's talk about a couple things. So we're going to start off with all the economic stuff. This stuff is better. So we've got more positive stuff this month than we've had in a little while for things in our world, which is real estate, which is what we really care about. So the inflation data is the first piece, and we got a big surprise this last month because the inflation data came in at straight up 0 for the month. You remember we do the last 12 months, add them all up, and we take out this number up here. And I told you guys last month we've got a little bit of a problem coming because we got some low numbers to take out. And I really did not, in fact, nobody expected us to take out that number and put a better one in there, and we actually did. We put in a 0. Come on in, man. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. Absolutely. There you go. We literally just got started. We're on page 1. So this was a really big surprise. Now, this is everything including food and energy. So that means, and food and energy is really, really volatile. So if you look at we strip out food and energy, we didn't hit a zero, but we still dropped it quite a bit from 0.4 to 0.2. So we're way better than we thought we were going to be. And nobody expected that. Thank you guys. We appreciate you guys coming. We're literally on page 1. You just got, can you drop that with Ashley when you go by? Thank you very much. So that was the really good news. Now, what does this mean? Well, all of a sudden we went from every Fed Reserve governor talking about rates need to stay higher, rates need to stay higher. Now all of a sudden there's cracks in the dam, and they're like, oh, well, wait a minute. If inflation is going to drop a little bit, maybe we can talk about lowering rates. And just the conversation that they're having around that has helped boost the market in a couple of places. But this was a nice number to show us that we could potentially still move down, even though we think we have some hard months coming up. I mean, we have, 3.2s in a row and then a 0.3 and a 0.2. So we have some hard numbers to beat. But we got a nice surprise to the downside. And here's the other thing, too, a little bit of extra commentary I'll throw on this. So Europe saw kind of the same thing about 6 to 8 months ago. And everybody kept talking about Europe's inflation is really stubborn and it's not falling as fast as the United States. And then all of a sudden they got a surprise number and their inflation fell off a cliff right after that. And they are down now to 2%. They think they're going to be under when they do their next reporting. And why do we care about this? Well, because they just started lowering rates, right? So if we follow their lead, I don't know that we will or not, but if we follow their lead, we might have a little bit of a surprise on our own that would really help us out. Because I really think, look, we've talked about it here. You guys are well educated. You know that the Fed dropping rates isn't going to influence the mortgage world just a whole lot, but it will darn sure influence buyers, right? And sellers for that matter. And so if we can just get in people's heads that things are getting better, I think we'll see some more activity. All right, so I'm still saying only one. Yeah, I'm only saying one. And part of the reason for that is I think we talked about it in the last month, but in case we missed it, couple of the Fed officials came out at the end of last month and said they didn't want to drop rates too close around the election because they didn't want to seem political. Well, all right, you only really have like the September timeframe to do that. The November one is after the election, so they could do it then, and then technically there's one in December. So it's possible you get 2 out of it, but really most of the stuff that I've been reading just suggests that they just want to get 1 under their belt this year just to make all of us feel better, and then they're going to chill and see what happens. They're not really jonesing to do it. So, in fact, there was a couple of them this morning out of London talking about how rates actually need to probably stay higher, and the one lady, she's a little bit of a hawk though, she said we might even need to go up. I was like, okay, you may have missed the boat. So we don't need to go up. But, all right, so down to 3.3. So again, super, super stubborn. We're not even as low as we were back here in January. So at the end of the day, it's not like we're getting so much better that they're going to have to do something. But we're at least moving in the right direction. Now, here's the other thing that moved in the right direction. We've been talking about unemployment forever. They needed over 4. They wanted over 5. We finally hit 4. Now, the question is, part of the reason we hit 4, by the way, is because there's more people coming into the marketplace. Or trying to find jobs. Not necessarily that people are losing jobs. But the question is this going to be an inflection point where we start to climb from here? Or are we just going to drop right back down? Because we've popped up before and then popped back down. If you could go further back, you'd see some higher ones and some lower ones. None of them are moving a whole lot. But the bottom line is we've done the roller coaster. So is this going to be the start of it going up, or is this really just the peak? We don't really know yet. The cool thing is the Fed officials immediately started saying, it's funny because all they talk about is we need 4, we need 4, we really want 5. And then as soon as we get a 4, then you got 2 or 3 of the guys in the back going, okay, well, I mean, if unemployment's going to go up, maybe we need to talk about dropping rates. So like everything that's happened the last month has been met with them saying, okay, well, if this is going to continue, we might need to cut rates. So that's a lot better conversation than we definitely don't need to cut rates, right? Because that's not helping our situation. All right. Texas is still hanging in there. In fact, Texas was still at 4.0, so not a big deal right there. In fact, Texas is at 4.0 for May, and the country's at 4.0. That's the first time we've even matched the rest of the country. So that's kind of interesting. All right, interest rates. Let's jump into rates because everybody loves to talk about this one. This is what's, I think, still holding us back as much as anything else. So again, green is good, bad is red, or red is bad. You can see the interest rates themselves. They're okay. I mean, we're going to show you here in a minute. They're hovering around 7. They're not terrible. We're not moving one way or another. But we also just don't have any direction. And right now, I actually printed this on Friday, so they were sitting right where they needed to be. Remember, this line tells us if they should be higher or lower. If it's in the middle, that means they're priced where they should be. They're priced where they should be, essentially, which means that there's no real help on the horizon. So if you're thinking that rates need to drop a little bit, or at least that they should drop a little bit, the market's not agreeing with you right now. They're kind of where they should be. So we're seeing a whole lot of upper sixes, 6.99-ish, 6.875 if you want to pay a little bit. I've got other people that are seeing 7.8, 7.25. So you're kind of in that weird space where, depending on what your qualifications are, you could be above or below 7 by a little bit. But bottom line is we're sitting right in that 7 range. All right, purchase apps. Check this out. Look at this big giant move up. This was kind of nice, right? So we went up over 15% in 1 week, which is not bad. Remember, this is the line that we put in. This is the start of summer, or the start of March, actually. So this is the first part of the year. And then since then, most of these have been yellows, I would say, but the blues have been kind of nice blues. They've been high, and one thing we did see was the highest jump in purchase apps. This is 2.5 weeks old though now. So the one from last week came out and it was only a little bit better, like 1% better, so not a whole lot going on there. The one this week they think is going to be lower, so we're just continuing on the roller coaster. We go up a little bit and then we come back down a little bit. Bottom line is apps are just kind of hanging where they have been. We're just not seeing a huge movement. And you can kind of see this on this chart right here. We got a bunch of noise right here, but we're still kind of hanging out at the bottom. So still a tremendous amount of pent-up demand. I read something the other day. I mean, there was something like 100,000 new buyers coming into the market every month, or there should be, because of the household formations that we've talked about in the past. And yet we still don't have any apps moving up. So at some point, that's going to break loose. I still think you're going to see, after the election, a lot of people come back into the market because, again, we've talked about before, 50% of the population is going to be really happy after that election. And the other 50% is going to be really mad. But I think the 50% that are happy are going to want to go buy a house if they haven't already bought one. So there's a lot of kind of conversation around that right now. All right, let's talk interesting real estate news for you guys. So this one I thought was super interesting. How many homeowners think they could actually afford the home they're in today if they had to buy it? And the answer was not a whole lot. Like 40% of them said they don't think they could afford to buy their current home today. This is kind of the, we talk about inventory, we talk about the rate lock effect. I think this is almost more why we have an inventory shortage than anything else. Because if 40% of us don't feel like we could even buy the same home we're in today, we're not going to move. Like, we're just holding on to the one that we have. So I thought that was super interesting. And then when you got into the I could afford it, really there was only 40% that said they probably or definitely could afford it. So essentially 6 out of 10 are unsure or feel like they couldn't afford to buy their current home. So this is part of what we need to switch around a little bit, I think, if we're going to get more inventory. Because right now, you just don't want to sell. If you can't go buy your existing house, you want to sell. Hottest markets for, this one came out actually in March. They roll them out at the end of every quarter, so that's why it says March up there. But one thing that was, we've talked about this one before, we kind of show it to you guys a couple times a year. Nothing in the South on here for the most part. Isn't that interesting? Especially because this is through the first quarter of the year, and in the first quarter of the year, it's still cold up here, right? So Manchester, Rochester's freezing at this part of the time, or that time of year. Lots of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Wisconsin. I mean, you start going further south is what, Ohio? Yeah, literally, the furthest south is Ohio. Does that even make sense? But these are literally the hottest markets for showings and purchases right now. So I don't know if that's because this place has been depressed going through the winter or what, but something has to give, right? Like, who wants to move up there? It's cold all the time. All right, and then this one I thought really, really interesting to me. So we talk in terms of total household sales. We talk in terms of what it costs to buy the average home listed. This one focuses on just new home construction. So this is areas where it takes at least $100,000 to qualify for a new home construction, or for a new construction home. So the median new home sales price in Texas was $411,000, and the median income needed to qualify for that was $137,000 basically. That's a lot of money to go out and buy a new house, right? But more importantly is 74% of households could not afford to get to that. So we just lopped off 3 out of 4 potential buyers because they can't afford to buy at that price point if they're new construction. What you got?
Well, I was thinking about the last slide. Are those states you think didn't have as much appreciation in home prices? Like the Ohio's?
Ohio probably is. I don't think there was a whole lot going on in Ohio, to be honest with you. Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Maine, I can tell you, has been ridiculously overpriced. But one thing that's interesting, and these are places that have low property taxes, and homeowners insurance. So their payments aren't as high. That's the thing. Now, except for Massachusetts, that place is just ridiculous. They tax everybody. But the rest of them, like Ohio included in that, Ohio's stupid cheap. I actually closed, I don't remember, no, it wasn't something this year. I was gonna say I closed a deal, a lady who moved here from Ohio 2-3 months ago, and she was shocked at our taxes. She was just like, that's insane. So I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know much about Wisconsin's taxes, but I think,
Trying to figure out the correlation, you know?
yeah,
Gotta do something to this.
that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I know Illinois is stupid cheap. I've done a lot of business in Illinois. I can do a couple condos a year up there. They're like $200,000 sales prices that are lofts in 200-year-old buildings that are stupid cool. Cost nothing. Their payments are nothing. So, and that's in the Chicago area. So, I don't know. Good question. All right, here's the more, so let's get them a little bit more local. What's Dallas-Fort Worth? Well, the median new home price in Dallas-Fort Worth is $538 now. Guys, remember, okay, in 2018, $538 was nearing luxury, right? So that's a big deal. But look at this. Look how much it takes to qualify for that in income, $181,000. Anybody have any idea what the median income is in Dallas-Fort Worth? It's like barely over 80 grand. So think about it. You have to double that number, more than double that number, to afford the median sales price in Dallas-Fort Worth. And you know, one of the things that I don't think a lot of us talk about on a regular basis, Dallas-Fort Worth is the highest priced area in Texas, except Austin. We'll take Austin, put it off by its side because that's California East. But take Austin out of the mix. Dallas-Fort Worth versus Houston versus San Antonio versus West Texas, always been one of the higher priced areas. And Austin didn't used to be expensive. It's just the California people that kind of messed that up. So we are very pricey, and it takes $181,000 a year to buy the average sales price home for a new construction. That's a pretty big number. And then when you look at it, 81% of our households, so we said 74% in Texas, but 81% in DFW cannot afford to go buy the average median new home sales price. Now, what does this mean to all of us? I look at this and go, something has to give, right? Something has to change. This number is as high as it is because the taxes and insurance are still too high. And so I'm hoping that maybe we'll get that under control. Insurance, by the way, I know we've talked a little bit about in the past, insurance is not moving in the right direction, guys. Like, it's getting worse. Have you guys seen that in any of your buyers or your listings? Like, the expense is insane, and everybody's getting pushed over to 2% wind and hail deductibles. So that insurance thing is a legit problem, and we're continuing to go kind of same path as Florida and California at this point. Anybody here have any business in Florida at all? Florida is at that point where the carriers are backing out, and it's hard for them to find insurance now. So a little interesting on that side. Okay, let's talk about next big thing. So here's the thing. I didn't realize, this was something I learned when I started digging into this. We've talked about it before. We talk about how so many of the homes are being bought up by corporations. But what gets counted in that is the new construction homes that are being built specifically for rentals. Have you guys run into this quite a bit? I hear some staggering numbers. I knew it was going on. I did not have any idea we were this deep into it. So number one, this is all through 23. So the next big thing in renting is to rent a brand spanking new home that someone built specifically for a rent. So number one, you can see nationwide how much these things have shot up. I mean, we go back here to pre-pandemic, we were only closing 6,700 units a year out of that. Now we're building 28,000 units in 2023. That's a huge number. But more specifically, look where Dallas ranks. We are number 2 in all the top 20 metros for building new construction that is specifically for rent only, that you can't even buy. And we're number 2 by a long shot. Once you take Phoenix, Dallas, and Atlanta out, the rest of these guys drop to nothing. Like, rounding out the top 20 is Riverside, California. They only built 344 of these things. So we drive around and I see all this new construction. What you don't realize is how much of it's actually only for rent. You can't even buy it. Now, this is part of what the politicians are talking about when they say we need to make some changes to this, because look, if we put 2,700 homes on the ground in Dallas-Fort Worth last year for purchase that were new construction, would that have helped our inventory situation? Yeah. And when we're talking about this number, it also influences the price we're paying for everything, because again, if we had 2,700 more homes on the ground, we'd have more competition, which means that we'd have lower prices. So this is influencing all of us. So this is just 2023. And then you look at the last 5 years, again, same exact story. So Phoenix, Dallas, Atlanta leading the charge. We're killing it. And then, but more specifically, just look at Texas in general places. So Dallas at number 2, Houston at number 4, Austin at number 7, San Antonio at 9. Like we have 4 of the top 10 spots. So we've talked a little bit in the past about Texas being the building capital of the country. What I didn't fully understand was, yeah, we're building a lot of homes for rent though. Not necessarily building them for you and I to go buy. And that's kind of scary to me. That I think is the bigger problem. Our increase from 2018 to 2023 percentage-wise, we're up 161%. That's a huge number in properties that we're building for rentals only. And here's the last piece of this puzzle. Look how many we have under construction right now. We have another 6,500 that are already permitted and ready to, and going in some stage of construction. So this does not include the ones that are not even permitted yet, that they've maybe purchased the land and they're working on development work. So it's not slowing down anytime soon. Now, my question to you guys is we always look at it from an angle of how do we make y'all's business better. I'm kind of curious, is there a way for y'all to play this? Like it doesn't do me any good at all, right? Like these people aren't even going to be looking for financing anyway, so I'm completely out. But can you play on this a little bit? Can you make something out of this? Can make some money out of this?
Find more investors that are looking to buy these houses.
Okay, and that's a good question.
Work with the builders.
So I think I think you're right about that. I think if you could find the builders and developers to get in with them, but that's really hard to do, and these are really big guys. I'm wondering how many of these are all corporately owned, or do they open any of this up to smaller investors? Do you guys know?
All the houses look exactly alike when you drive by those neighborhoods.
Literally identical. Literally identical. So anyway, just a curiosity, y'all ought to look into this a little bit, because if there are any of these places where you could sell it to individuals, this might be a business opportunity for you guys. And Emily Courtwright might be a good person to ask about this, because if y'all are on any of her investing emails, one of her investing emails here recently was talking about purchasing new construction for rent, like on a large scale. So there must be something somewhere where you could get in without being a giant corporation. Anyway, just a side note, but I mean, that's an easy sell, right? You're probably selling a block of 10, 15, 20 at a time. That's a big commission for you guys. So, okay. All right, I love this one too. So consumers bill paying priorities. So number one, if you're in pink, that means that you're paying later, you're going to miss a payment. If you're in blue, it doesn't apply to you, and 59% say they're going to apply on time. But here's the thing. So the good news is mortgage and rent down here, we are pretty much paying that on time all the time. That one's good. In fact, we're seeing this in the mortgage space also. We have no delinquencies. However, when you get all the way up to the student loans, well, about 1/4 of the people paying student loans right now say they're going to be late this month on their payments, which does not surprise me at all. In fact, student loans and personal loans, I can tell you we're talking to clients all the time they keep deferring their student loans even though they're supposed to be paying them now, because they keep thinking the government's going to wipe them out for them. So I'm wondering how much of that's going on. And I've also seen people who are delinquent on them who say the government says they're going to take care of it for me, so I'm not going to take care of it. So no, the government has no money. They just have to print it. So exactly right. But we're going to hold on to our auto loans. We're going to hold on our credit cards even up here at 11%. And then the buy now, pay later thing. Did you guys see that Apple just recently killed this? They rolled it out, and then a year later it was already gone. So buy now, pay later is kind of the next big fad in the credit card world, which is I'm going to pay it today and put it on. It's like layaway, right? I'm going to put it on today, but I don't have to pay for it until tomorrow. I know every month I get an email from my Chase card that says, hey, you bought X amount and these things are eligible for you to pay over time. They call it pay over time for 12 months, and you can stretch it out. The problem with buy now, pay later is it's 20+% interest rates, right? So you're paying a huge amount of money for it. But Apple just stopped theirs. They announced theirs last summer. They didn't even make it to the 1-year mark before they killed it because the delinquencies were so high. So that was kind of interesting to me. And then when you look at why they're falling behind on their loans, the top section here really quick. So when you look at increased cost of essential expenses was a huge piece of it. In fact, over 20% of respondents said that was a big problem for those areas. And then job loss or reduced hours or work less than expected. Those are the two that kind of that were the biggest reasons why people were having trouble. But I loved this one right here in the middle. I forgot to pay 11%. I just forgot to pay. So anyway, I thought that one was hilarious. I'm like, I was actually surprised that one number was not higher. Does that not surprise you a little bit? So, because we do see that all the time. We talk to people and they literally say, I just screwed that up. I don't know. I forgot about it. All right, here's what it is. And then there was still a handful of people down here who said did not want to pay, but look, it was the student loan people. So they're like, they're bringing down the man. We're not going to pay our student loans anymore. So I thought that was awesome. I was like, that is hilarious. So, okay. All right. Now, here's some positive stuff for us. This is latest survey on what Americans think are the best investments out there. And look what's leading the charge. Numero uno is real estate. So that's still good for us, right? That's still 36% of the respondents said real estate was the best place to put money. And then you had stocks and mutual funds, which is good also. I don't know the cryptocurrency thing is interesting. So if you're a crypto king, I'm not talking bad about you at all. I think it's got its place, but still I thought it was funny that 3% still thought cryptocurrency was the best place to put your money. Here's the thing. I can tell you from our business, this one is the big conversation point. I have more. One thing that's picked up in our business this year is the investors coming back into the conversation. And a lot of them are new or second-time investors. And they all say the same thing, which is there's no better place for me to park my money right now than real estate. So I'll take it. I mean, right, I'm not sure that I 100% agree with it. I think you need to be balanced a little bit, but I'll take it. And then very, very few of them, I've got a lot of them pulling money out of stocks and mutual funds because I think real estate's a better place to play. And I will also tell you, this is why we're seeing so many cash deals, because people think it's better to put the money over here than it is over here, right? So they're pulling it out of the markets. We're seeing that quite a bit right now. All right, let's drive into some technical stuff here real quick. So let's take home sales. So number one, home sales for May literally just got reported on Thursday. Came out at 4.11 million units. Last month we were 4.14. So we trickled down a little bit. But more importantly, we're still just kind of hanging in here, guys. We haven't completely taken out this low that we hit back in here, but we're continuing to slide down a little. The only thing that I'm worried about on this is we should be moving up. This is the summer months. These numbers should be growing, not going the wrong direction. And we always slow down in the third quarter. Like every single year, you can watch it like clockwork, we slow down in the third quarter, which means that you probably have a Q3 coming up that's going to be kind of interesting. Now, we also showed you guys the first year when we talked about kind of predictions for the year. Election cycles usually pick us up in the fourth quarter a little bit. After the election, like I said, 50% of people are really happy. They buy homes for whatever reason. So we think we'll see a pickup in the fourth quarter, but I was more concerned about what Q3 was going to look like. And right now I'd say it may be a little on the slow side. Now, that's the negative news. Let me give you the silver lining. The silver lining is look how far we were down here in December, January. I don't think we're going back to that necessarily. We're not seeing that level of drop-off where the buyers are just done. We're just seeing very discerning buyers who are very cautious about their spending their money, looking for the right thing. Like John said, they don't like the way the kitchen's structured on a sub $300,000 new rebuilt home in Watauga. That's kind of crazy because typically that's a home that gets snatched up. So still at the bottom, a lot of pent-up demand, and I don't think we're going traditionally or quite a bit lower. Now, technically speaking, you look at existing home sales for the whole area, the country was down 2%, the South was down a little bit more than that, but let's look at our local stuff. This is where I'm going to show you that Texas is starting to really lag behind in a little bit. So first of all, the country was down about 2%. The South was down about 3%. This is Dallas-Fort Worth. So this is the Fort Worth side. Remember, this is our Fort Worth Metro. So the Fort Worth Metro, we were down, now this is for the month of May, we were down 7.2%. And when you look at Dallas, we were down 3%. So we're dropping more than the rest of the country, and even in some cases more than Texas. So that's kind of interesting to me right now, and that's what we're feeling in our business. We're seeing this play out. When you look at, in fact, this was an interesting note out of our friends over at Fidelity just the other day. So they feel like existing home sales may increase slightly over the rest of the year if rates continue to drop and if inventory continues to climb. But their overall concern is until we fix affordability, then we're not going to see any real momentum. And I think that's the number one thing that we're still seeing right now also. If we have to fix the affordability side. Now, that can get fixed with rate drops, right? As the rates go down, affordability will come back. I ran numbers. All right, hang on a second. I had a contract that came in yesterday at like it's a mid threes, 350, so I think it was 347. When I ran the math for them, when rates dropped from where they are today to 5, they were going to save almost $500 a month. That's a big drop, right? We only needed to get to a 5% rate for that to happen. Bless you. So, like I told them, I don't know if that's going to happen in 2 or 3 years, but we feel like you'll get to 5 at some point in the near future here, in the next 2 to 3 years. So I'd say short term. And that's $500 is a big difference in their monthly payment, and that's going to make a huge difference on affordability. Now, once we see that, what's going to happen to the craziness of the market? It's going to go right back to being pretty bonkers busy, right? Because if you can increase your affordability by $500 a month, you can pull a lot of buyers in. And again, that was a moderately priced average home. I think it was 347 exactly. So, all right, pending home sales. We don't have this number out just yet. However, we are expecting it to be down about 4%. It's due out on Thursday. So we'll see what that looks like. We do think it is going to go down though. So that makes sense. We felt that in the business. You guys are seeing that. If you don't have any showings, then you can't have a lot of pending home sales, right? So don't let this one scare you when it comes out, but we do think it'll pop it back down to here. What is interesting is if it goes down to this level, that'll put us back down to where we stopped the economy for the 1 month of real COVID in Texas. And then we said, all right, let it all go, and we brought it all back. Well, that'll still put us back down to that level. So, but you can see that anytime we've come down even close to that, then we usually bounce back up. So that's a potential good sign. You know, we hit that number and then everybody gets out there. By the way, just as a quickie, anybody seeing price drops? Like everywhere? It's pretty bonkers, right? So that's a little bit of the equation here. When the pending home sales go down like this, price drops really tend to pick up because the sellers get nervous. But my favorite time, so for me at least last 28, 29 years I've been doing this, my favorite time of year to buy is coming up right now. Right after these kids start going back to school and you're still in the summer months, all the sellers who are on for the summer go, uh-oh, I didn't sell my house. And then what happens? Then you get a price drop for a little bit. And then they start to go back up as you get closer to the holidays, right? So I'm kind of curious to see if we get that this year, especially if the market really did stop after the Memorial Day holiday like we felt it. I'm kind of curious if that might boost all of us. It'd be a really good thing. So y'all get on the phone with your sellers, tell them to drop prices, and we might see some more activity come back in the marketplace. Okay, so let's look at pending home sales for us. So Fort Worth Metro was down 2.9%. So we think the market's down around 4. We were down 2.9 for last month, so that would actually put us performing a little bit better. Dallas was down 3.8. So again, kind of right in line with what the national expectation is. So I'm not going to say we're going to see anything different than that. But here's one thing. Remember, this goes back to 21, guys. So we are now well below, I would say, where we were in 22 and 23. And those were high rate environments, right? The high rate environment started in the early part of 22. So I'd say at this point, the buyers tend to be a little fed up more than we thought they were going to be. Back here last month, we were looking pretty good, and we thought pending home sales might actually continue to rise and give us a good summer. And now they've kind of rolled over a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go on that. All right, average days on market down to 26 for April. So properties are moving even faster across the nation. But look at Dallas-Fort Worth. So here's the Fort Worth side. We climbed 5 days. In fact, we're sitting at right at 34 days on the market in the Fort Worth side, and the Dallas side just a smidge better than us, sitting at 33. So we're going against the grain with the national market again, which is super interesting to me. In fact, I'm going to show you one thing here in a minute that's really going to kind of boggle your mind a little bit. Let's talk home prices. That's actually where I want to go. So number one, everybody understands that the only, and this is starting to be more and more on the national news, we're hearing about it more in the financial stuff. You're hearing CNBC, CNN start talking about this. The only reason home prices are staying up is because there's not enough supply to meet full demand. So my question to you guys is that going to change anytime soon? Even if we get 30, 40% more inventory on the market right now, and we get back to pre-pandemic levels, is there going to be enough supply for the demand? No way. It's not even going to come close. So if that's the case, prices are going to stay buoyed for the entire time. You're not going to see prices come down. Until supply outstrips demand, you're not going to see prices come down. And right now, we just don't have enough, and we're not going to have enough. So sales prices year over year, this is actually old now today. It was 5.7 in the month of April. The May one is out now, 7.2. So remember that, 7.2. In the South, they were up 3.7 for April. I don't know what the specific breakout is for May yet, but let's talk Dallas-Fort Worth. We were literally down 1.5%. So hold on. The whole country went up 7.2. Fort Worth went down 1.4. Dallas went down 1.8. That's interesting, right? So we just underperformed the rest of the country by 9%, 8 to 9%. Does that make sense? Now, we've been on this train for a while talking about how we never dropped price when the rest of the country did. In fact, the coast especially dropped a ton. And I've been saying for a while, at some point that's going to hurt us. I'm kind of wondering if that's starting to show up here. So now, if for you guys, let's talk about little nuggets for y'all. If you got sellers, you should be having the conversation with sellers that, hey, our price appreciation in DFW seems to have slowed down a little bit. If you want to get rid of this home, it might be a good idea to price it accordingly and move it, right? So let's get off the fence conversation. On the buy side, it's a little bit harder because if you show a buyer this data, they go, well, if you just wait a little bit longer, it's going to come down, right? Well, I don't think it's going to come down necessarily because you still don't have enough supply. So there is a way to fix or to right size our pricing without having to bring prices down, and that's called stagnation. We can just stay stagnant for years. We've seen it in Dallas-Fort Worth before. So, I heard the stories from the old guys when I got in the business about the 80s in DFW where we just stayed flat for years. No appreciation of any kind, period, not 1%, not 2%, nothing. We can fix this problem if we stay flat for the next 5 or 6 years, right? Because then we've given up 3 to 4% appreciation per year to get back to even. So I don't know if the answer is that we're going to go down a little bit. I would think we're probably more likely to stagnate than to go down, which if you're a buyer is another way to get a buyer off the fence too and say, look, bottom line is you can wait for them to come down, but waiting so far has hurt you to the tune of 42% since the pandemic. If you, more likely, because we still don't have enough supply here for the demand coming in, you'd be better off probably buying now because you're probably just going to stay flat. And staying flat's not the worst thing on the planet because what are rents going to continue to do? Climb. Understand that rents are kind of lagging. So all these people who are renting property right now, their landlords can only increase rent so much each year without causing their tenants to move out, right? So there's like an artificial cap on it. Well, they're not, I've talked to investors all the time, they're not ready, let me rephrase that, their rent is not equaling what they need it to be right now in order to make a profit. And when I talk to new investors and they run the math, they can't get enough rent to equal a profit. So what they're saying is that we have to continue raising rents for the next several years, even if everything else stays flat. So again, if you're talking to a buyer and they're saying, well, I'll just keep renting because this world's slowing down, great, your rent's still going to go up 5-6% next year and 5-6% the year after that. Or we can buy a home now and we can keep our payment the same going forward and not have to worry about that. That makes more sense, right? So anyway, just a thought, just a couple little nuggets for you to think about. All right, average sales price, we're still sitting in there. We're dropping roughly 1.5% off of sales price on the Fort Worth side. We're also doing the same thing on the Dallas side. So again, I know there's still roughly 1 in 4 homes are selling at or above list price, but 75% of them are selling under list. So unless you have a really special house, you're probably not a reason to offer over list price right this moment. And when you look at home price forecasts, what I think is super interesting is none of these guys are updating their home price appreciation forecast. So Mortgage Bankers Association, Fannie Mae, NAR down here thinks we're only going to get 1.8% this year. This is what everybody thinks that we're going to get for home price appreciation, but what have we already appreciated? 7.2 year over year. So in theory, we're about halfway through the year. You've had 3.5% appreciation just in raw home price from January, but they think we're only going to get to 4 or 3. So either they're wrong or we're going to stall here a little bit. We'll find out. But I think these guys are wrong. I think we're going to keep going up the rest of this year, is my personal belief. Now, in Dallas-Fort Worth, they may be right because we, again, are starting to see a little bit of a stall right now. Okay. Housing inventory. This is the thing, this is the bright, shiny gold thing that's still getting everybody's attention. This is year over year. Look at the ginormous number for Texas. 42% increase in inventory. Think about that, guys. That's huge. National average at 35. I've got my in-laws are in the Tampa area, and Florida as a whole is 70%. I think I saw Tampa the other day was up 80% year over year inventory. So why do we care about this? Obviously, we've talked about it before. This inventory piece is what's going to drive buyers back in the marketplace, right? Not just from the buyers themselves having more to choose from, but also the sellers have to have a place to go. So you're going to sell a home, buy a home in a lot of cases. Now, remember, a lot of them are moving out of state. We've shown you the statistics on that. So you need to have your referral partners in these other states kind of ready to go. But I'll throw one more thing at you, which is if that inventory number continues to rise, one thing that's already being talked about now, because this is going on basically the third month in a row where you've had big inventory increases, okay? So here's the conversation going on nationally. The rate lock effect is starting to thaw. So remember, the rate lock effect is, I'm sitting at a 3% mortgage, why would I move? Well, the answer is, if I don't want to move, if I don't really care about moving, I'm not going to choose to move and give up my 3%. But there's a percentage of the population every year that has to move. Their place is too small, their place is too big, they can't afford it, they got married, they got divorced, whatever, somebody died, they have to move. And that piece has been stuck. Well, they're starting to say this may be breaking loose now. That's interesting, because if this breaks loose, as much as the national news will say it's really bad because the mortgage business or the real estate business is slowing down, what's it going to mean for our business if we get 50, 60, 70% more inventory on the ground? You think you're going to have more buyers come back in? There's a possibility. You'll eventually, let's put it this way, initially no, but eventually yes. You will eventually draw enough buyers back in the marketplace, because if the inventory rises, the prices have to come down a little bit also, right? So now you've given the buyer a reason to get back in. So that's what we're looking for. So this is the part I'm kind of interested to see what happens. And when you look at it now, going back to November, this is on a national level, guys. Technically, we've had 6 straight months of increases, and May's the 7th one. 7 straight months of inventory increases. There's a slide that I always pull out of here, but it shows this going back for like 3-4 years, and almost every single month is red. There are no 7-month inventory builds in that slide. And I think it goes back 5 years, actually, I think. So we're coming up on probably an unprecedented amount of inventory build from a percentage standpoint and from a length of time that it's building. But we are still 35% lower than we were in 2019. So we're not there yet. But again, we're getting way, way closer. We're now down 35% inventory-wise versus 19. We were down 70+% even just at the start of this year. So we've now cut that deficit in half. So this gets better. Things are going to get better for us. Okay, so inventory, a couple of things. This just gives you a little bit. I like this couple of these slides because they went back to 2017, just to give you an idea. This is how much we're building on the last couple of years, but look how far we still have to go. And by the way, if we get to those numbers, right now we're sitting at about 800,000 units for sale across the country. If we get up to 1.2-ish or so, we're going to be higher than we have been since 2017. That's not that far-fetched. If the inventory keeps growing at a 20 to 30% clip per month, we'll be there by the end of the year. And then what happens at the end of the year when we get into winter? What does the market typically do? Slows down a little bit, right? So I don't have as many buyers, but if I still have homes on the market, then my inventory continues to increase as I add more homes. So this is kind of setting up for maybe a really, really good late winter, early spring going into 25, if this continues to build. And then when you look at, this one goes back, again, just kind of shows you the current inventory for the month of May each of these years. You can see that we're almost back to where we were in May of 2020, which was down from 19, but we had kind of taken a leg up there all of a sudden once we were starting to come out of COVID a little bit. But again, 1.18 in 2019, 1.15. So we technically don't even have to get to 1.2, and we're going to be in pretty decent territory from an inventory standpoint. All right, the other thing is new listing. This is what's going to continue to drive this. So new listings still coming on the market year over year. Now this number started to slow down. We're up 6% year over year. This is on the national level. And if you look at it, well, I'll show you this one. I'll give you the local stuff. So you can see the inventory build starting here really quick, which is good. But let's look at the more national stuff. So we're up, Dallas-Fort Worth's up 25% month over or year over year for the month of May. Now remember, the state is up 42. So we're not quite as high as they are, but one of the biggest reasons the state's up is because Austin has surged. Austin's up like 100%. They're one of the highest increases in the country for listings, and they're seeing price drops because of it. So I would say we're probably not lagging Texas necessarily. I think Austin's probably picking us all up, but we're up 25% on this side, and then the Dallas side, look at that one, 38% more inventory. Now remember, we always talk Dallas because number one, we're all over the place, right? Don't just talk Tarrant County and the surrounding counties. Go Dallas County and that MSA. But Dallas County does double the business that we do on the Tarrant County side. So twice the business, twice the opportunity. We now have agents from Tarrant County that we're partnering with doing mailers and campaigns and stuff on the east side because they want to grow their business. So still a lot of opportunity that direction. And by the way, for those of you, for the Pantuso team who really loves to do luxury, a lot of luxury on that side, like high dollar luxury. So great area to be in and not nearly as many agents chasing it as you might think. Okay, so age of inventory, we're up to 44 days. So we're sitting on the market a little bit longer than everybody else. In fact, we were up 6 days just this last month. 8.5 on the Dallas side. So we're not moving quite as fast as everybody else. And then the new listings piece, we're not up as much as the rest of the country. So I am going to watch this because I'm a little bit worried if this slows down. Last month we were up like 28% for new listings put on for the month. We only went over it by 4.7 this last month of May, and then 9.2 on the Dallas side. So don't get me wrong, you're going up 5% in new listings coming on the market at any given month. You're still seeing a nice increase. 9% is even better, but it's not the 20 and 30 that we were seeing before. But bottom line is this, watch these numbers because this is going to tell you which direction our market's going. The more inventory we get, the healthier you and I are going to get in our businesses, which is also good. All right, price drops. This is something else we're going to keep an eye on because remember we've talked about we haven't had nearly enough price drops. We're still only seeing roughly 7.8% on the Tarrant County side. And again, the Tarrant County MSA, and we're seeing the same thing on the Dallas side. So while we feel like there's a ton of price drops that are out there, percentage-wise, it's still not big enough. That number could easily get over 10, 12% without even breaking a sweat. So we're not quite there yet, but you do start to see, look at, hang on a second, 23 is the blue line. Look at where we were in 23. We just kind of slowly meandered around, and then look at the increase. Remember, I stopped it right here because I wanted you guys to see the May stuff. Look at what June could potentially look like for price drops. Now that's a different conversation because now we're starting to go straight up. So again, kind of a sign of things getting healthier if that's the case. Weeks of supply is still sitting at 15 on our side, 14 on the Dallas side, so no big deal there. All right, mortgage rates, kind of gave it away earlier. As of Friday, 7.02. I think today they're 7.01 is what they officially were through Monday, so we haven't really moved a whole lot. The good news is we're not sitting up here at this high point, and so that's helped out a little bit. But the spread that we've been talking about, and I know this is a super boring conversation, but the spread thing is what's driving rates higher anyway, and so that's why we're going to watch it. So this month, the spread, this is the 10-year Treasury, this is the spread above it, we're sitting at 2.75. Last month, we were at 2.66. So we had, to kind of bring you back, we were at 2.81, then dropped to 2.66. We hoped that was going to be the start of maybe a lowering of the spread, because when the Fed drops interest rates, we're going to get a very tiny percentage of it. We're going to get no more than 25 or 30% of what he does. So if he goes down a point, which he's not going to do anytime soon, we're going to get 20 or 30 basis points. This thing, if it comes back in line, which it's supposed to be somewhere around 175 bips, we're going to get 100 basis points of rate drop. So think about it. Instead of me telling you rates are at 7 with some 6.99s out there, now I'm going to tell you rates are at 6 with some 5.99s. That's going to get this thing moving, right? So this is what we care about, and we actually trickled back up. That's not good. So I was hoping to not see that. Because this spread piece is, I think, super, super important for us. Now remember, I'm telling you, I don't think this is going into 1.75. I think it's going to go to about 2.25 because they've been charging us this kind of money for 2.5 years. Why are they going to take it all back? Like, they're not going to give it all back, but I think they'll give some of it back because they don't have a choice. Otherwise, the mortgage market's going to stay stalled for a long time. All right, and then last thing for you here real quick is just showings for the last April. These are all Aprils, these are not Mays, but you can see our showing activity is actually higher than it was going back to 2018, which is interesting. Now, not as high as it has been the last couple of years, so I get that. And this year almost doesn't count because we just shut down everything for COVID in April of 20. But our showings are still actually relatively healthy compared to 18 and 19. Part of the problem I think we have is that while there's plenty of showings, the buyers are more picky, is what it sounds like from listening to you guys. And I can tell you on our end, the buyers they're not just picky, they're very discerning about a lot of stuff. I mean, they walk in, they see deferred maintenance, they walk back out. We see a lot of that going on. Also, we're seeing a rash of contracts come in and then drop because of inspection issues. So still a very high problem in that world too. So more showings is good, but ultimately we need them to stick also. And then interest rate projections. So Fannie Mae, this is the one, remember I keep telling you guys, they've generally been kind of more on top of it than everybody else. They updated their number a little bit. The MBA did not change theirs. This is the end of the year. So they're all pointing to 7, 6.5, 6.5. about 6.7, about 6.67, and then Q2 of next year, the average running about low to mid sixes. I think they're too high up here. I think they're spot on with Q4. I think we're still going to be in the mid to upper sixes by the end of the year, but I do think these numbers are going to be a little bit cheaper. So I think we'll get better, which is good because our buyer demandometer, which we always end on, still shows buyers are not super excited right now. At least we're not solidly above 7 anymore. We're just a little bit above it, and that helps a little bit. But so we're fluctuating, but I can tell you any day where rates are up or we see the next couple of 3 days, we just don't hear from buyers. They're super in tune more than they ever have been with what's going on. I mean, and this stuff is reported daily. So you can go to Mortgage News Daily and check their rates every single day if you want. It gets updated around 2 to 3 o'clock every day. And I swear the buyers must have that bookmarked on their phones or something to ping them, because as soon as we see rates over 7, they go away. All right, what questions can I answer for you guys? So we're kind of, I would say to end on this, I'd say we're kind of a mixed bag. I would say we are not all bad, but not all good either. And some of the foundation things that we need, like inventory, is getting better. So if we can build from that, then I think the rest of it starts to improve. And I also think the other takeaway is Texas as a whole and Dallas-Fort Worth in particular, kind of lagging the rest of the country on a couple things. So for whatever that means. Now, the good news is, by the way, you still have way more people moving here than just about any place else in the country. So even if we lag behind a little bit, you're still going to have a lot of business coming in the door if you're working. But it would be nice to see some of our metrics improve a little bit from where we are.
Are you seeing any buyers that are having concerns about the whole NAR settlement, that they may be responsible for?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're hearing crickets on the buyer thing. What are you guys hearing? Like, I haven't had a buyer ask me about it since it very first hit the news. And I shared with you guys, after it hit the news, I was in a couple of places. One of them was a sandwich shop ordering sandwiches, and the manager asked me about the NAR settlement. I'm like, huh? So, I mean, everybody heard about it. And then the other place, I don't remember the other one, I was just kind of out and about with some other people. But since then, it's crickets. And I'm not hearing it from you guys either, by the way. Are you guys running into it yet?
More like when it happened, buyers were asking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that conversation of, hey, it's always been negotiable, and you just tell them, they're like, oh, okay.
Yep. Well, and I will say this, so I'm going to pick on my father-in-law, whom I love dearly. Literally, I would do anything for the man. And they're in Florida, and they're thinking about selling their property in Florida. And he asked me the other day, he's like, so I heard I don't have to pay any commissions anymore to sell my home ever. I'm like, that's not it, Dad. It doesn't work that way. But 30 minutes later, he was still on. So I understand I don't pay $1 in commissions now. I'm like, no, that's not it at all. So I think we're going to have some people who are still confused, to be fair. And I've heard one of you guys told me that you ran into something where the buyer had to pay 1% because the seller would only pay 2%. So that's not too bad. Like, that could be a lot worse, right? But other than that, I haven't heard of a stitch. And by the way, when does that take effect? Yeah, so I mean, we're within 60 days of it taking effect. We're almost at 45 days out, and no one's talking about it. I can tell you VA did officially. We told you before that VA had already come out and whispered to everybody that they're going to be cool with the VA buyers paying the commission. They've said now officially they're done with it. They're totally fine with it. They put a temporary order in, and it'll become permanent later in the year when they make some other adjustments. But VA buyers are totally good. So VA, FHA, conventional, everybody can pay the entire amount. Does not matter. There's no limitation. And they're not adding it into the seller concessions, so you don't have to worry about, well, you're capped because we were going to get seller concessions for this, that, or the other. They can just pay it. So you're good there. So from a technical standpoint, nothing going on in the mortgage space about it. You're totally good. Bless you. Good question. What else you guys got? Well, the June crowd's like an easy one. I appreciate you guys coming in here today. Like I said, we heard from a lot of people that said they weren't going to be able to make it because it was June and they were busy or they were traveling, but we appreciate you guys coming by. So if anything, we're around, we're here. I'm assuming you guys are going to be working. What do you guys, all right, last poll question. How many of you guys think July 4th is going to be busy? I think it's going to be 100% dead. Like, especially this year because of the way it falls on that Thursday. Thursday, I guarantee you Friday, everybody's taking off. We've already gotten a ton of notices from title companies. They will not be open on Friday. So I think it's going to be a very slow July 4th holiday. But if y'all are around and you need help, we are too. So give us a buzz. We'll all be working. So thank you guys. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
You bet.
Question about
Yeah.
prorated taxes.
Yes.
And this is, Brenda had this happen. She had a cash buyer that was buying a house in Woodland Springs
Okay.
for his elderly mother to live in.
Okay.
And the lady that was selling the house in Woodland Springs, she was the original owner. She had homestead over 65. So when they prorated the property taxes, they only collected $1,200
Yep.
from that seller, but the unexempt taxes were close to 8.
Right.
So,
Thank you for coming, by the way. We appreciate
so
you guys.
then on the reverse, she's got a past client whose mother is selling, her elderly mother selling her house down in Spring to a wholesaler.
Yep.
And she had all kinds of, exemptions on her house.
Yep.
But the title company down there prorated on the full taxes because they said because of the type of entity that was buying it.
Oh, because that entity wouldn't qualify for a single exemption.
Yeah, because they were like a whole.
So it's interesting you asked me this because the contract I got yesterday for that 347 as sales price has the exact same scenario you just described. The current owner is $500 a year, 484 specifically. The unexempt taxes are 4,600. So I've reached out to title and to our closing department, the head of our closing for the nationwide, to say, is there a better solution to this? Because technically on the mortgage side, when you buy the home, you assume the taxes for the year, right? So if you're escrowing, I have to plug into the escrow account whatever month you're in during the year for taxes. So in this case, this one's closing in August. So I have to plug in 8 months of property taxes for this poor guy. But when I do that, he's putting in like $4,200 plus reserves. He's putting in like $4,200 for the whole year. The seller's going to give him a credit at $40 a month. They're going to give him a $240 credit. But the tax authority is going to tax that first 8 months of the year at the seller's $40, right? And then they're going to hit him for the $350 a month after that. So there has to be a solution in there somewhere. We're going to look for it right now. We haven't seen it be this big a discrepancy, so nobody's cared. Right. When it's $1,000 off, no one cares. But my poor dude's like, I'm bringing $3,000 more than I should be,
Right.
which is true.
Yeah.
So, but technically, they're right. What you just described is correct on how it's supposed to be treated. And that's the exact same conversation I had with him yesterday. So there is a solution somewhere. I'll let you know when I find it, because I'm sure, I'm going to talk to title this afternoon and see what they come up with.
Because they're, title company in Spring was like, that's the way we do it. Then you
Yep.
called Lisa Saw, and Lisa said, yeah, unfortunately.
That's the way we do it.
That's the way we do it.
That's the way everybody does it, and I'm afraid that's going to be the answer. So now, technically speaking, if you're escrowed like that, then, like in my buyer's case, he will get his money back next year on his escrow analysis.
Right.
He just has to wait 9-10 months to do that. But once we analyze it and see we have way too much, then we'll have so much we have to write him a check. So, yep. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate y'all coming.